Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review, part of our Language Completeness and Consistency series. All right, we got some often non-trivial things to look at. Okay, the first topic is how do we store random possible settings and values and things in
Right. So,
functions?
so, 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 so I've identified at least three, perhaps four things that, you know, have been mentioned, which don't necessarily all fit into the same bucket.
Okay,
Um, right. So one thing is, getting the possible string arguments. Um,
right, or string values. Yeah,
right.
that's what you're talking about, string values. So this is an example. So one example which we keep on bringing up is, well, okay, let's one general category is there is a function. It has a certain list of possible like method options, for example. Okay, settings for method options.
Well, I don't know that. I think that that's a different bucket than this one.
Okay, but let me explain what I'm have in mind, or like for example, another one is voice styles. Here's the typical thing. Another one would be
Uh, yeah. Oh, and like I said, I think those are in different buckets.
okay,
Code
all right. Well, these
styles, yeah, that's getting possible settings for options.
okay, all right, fine,
Uh,
fine. Another one would be another of that type, and then we're going to talk about why one wants this. Another of that type would be graph layout. So here's why I want this stuff, and why one wants this stuff. Let's say I have a graph and I'm trying to lay it out somehow, or I have a uh what's another a geo plot or something, and I want to try multiple possibilities. Let's say with graph layout, I just want to take a graph. I've got my little graph, and I want to just run it against all the things we have. Okay, now some of them may be parameterized, they may have all kinds of things, but I just want to do this. So here's the thing I want to do. So I go to graph and I say, okay, I'm looking at the documentation, and now I see, okay, we have an option somewhere here, graph layout. Okay, we've got various layout options, we've got various settings. Okay, this is where I start to go crazy. I want that list. How do I get it? See what I'm saying?
yes,
Mhm.
we understand what you want, what you're asking for.
So one thing we could do is, at the top of every table, it could say, it could have a click to copy right here. That's one possibility. There's no, that it's only a documentation play. See what I'm saying? But it's
Hmm.
not programmatic. So, I mean, that's one, let's just list that out as possibilities, you know, C2C in documentation. We haven't done that in the past, but we certainly know the theory of C2Cs. Um, another part, C2C in documentation giving the direct lists. Another possibility would be C2C in documentation uh, pointing to, e.g., the data repository or a function. I mean, actually, the C2C in documentation seems like a good idea anyway. See what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think that's um, yes and no, right? I mean, right, these are all
None of
right.
those are parameterized.
Well, not only are none of those parameterized, but also, right, we have presumably the programmatic list of everything would be, the union of those three tables.
Absolutely, yes.
And whereas I would think it would be weird if the click to copy above, you
Did
know,
all of them. No, I agree. I agree. But look, if I could get each of these tables in uh you know I don't, if I could get each of these tables rather than me having to try and copy them off the page or something, that would already be very, very useful. In fact, it might even be better than having one big list, because if you look, these apply to different kinds of graphs.
Well,
I mean, these ones, that one does.
yes.
Um, okay. All right. So what are the other ideas here about actually? Okay. So syntax information is another, or information. Yeah, that's interesting. What are some examples of string argument cases?
Right. Well, I mean,
Like
any
material shading, for example.
Say that one again.
Material shading.
Is that a okay?
well, I would say
Just the one, I was looking at, this morning going, I wish I had, a way to get all of them.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is a typical case where you just want to run, make pictures of all of them and pick the best.
right, or um yeah, like integer string. You could, write the different, right?
Absolutely. Another good example. Why
Um,
doesn't that autocomplete? Oh, because it's
do
the
you
last
need the
second argument. Yeah, I mean, great example. Okay, so in both of these, I claim click to copy and documentation would already be very useful, because I don't think you're even going to know that there is a possibility of multiple options unless you go to documentation. So I mean, having a C2C right here
I
would,
mean, the moment you start typing in there, it shows you possible completions,
I
right?
know that the possible completions are fine. Well, okay, so then the possibility would be in the autocomplete to have something at the bottom that gives you a list of all of them. So that's another at the end of an autocomplete is another place for this.
I added a possibility in the chat via Wolfram language data.
Yes. I think there's a bit, well, okay, so look, the question is, that's interesting and an alternative to a function settings type thing. You know, I hadn't really thought of the C2C in documentation, and it could very well be that C2C in documentation pointing to, that what that actually pastes is the thing that says Wolfram language data, blah, 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 blah. And that
Mm.
would also be a good solution to that problem with the graph layout thing where you might get a part of it or you might get the whole thing.
I don't think that's really you know
What?
uh, uh, I think well, may all right. I suppose in the cases where that list comes from the documentation, it could say that, right? Certainly not all of these things come from the documentation, right?
Okay, what's an example that doesn't?
Entity,
Okay, so for example, entity type.
right?
Okay. Another one is, well, but in entities, we have the entity list concept.
Well, but that gives you the possible entities. It doesn't give you of a given type. It doesn't tell you what the possible types are.
I know, but that's what in entity type, that's what we have here.
Well, it's also entity value bracket bracket.
Yeah, I think entities are a slightly special case.
Right.
And I'm not, you know, uh, okay. Okay.
This is an ISO list. It's a standard list.
Yeah, right, which includes Puerto Rico as a separate country. I'm sorry, I was just curious why. Okay. Okay. Are there any other cases that... Okay, what do people think about WDR entries? Bad idea?
I think it's pointless. I think, right, if we're going to make this a documentation play, then, right, Wolfram language data is already derived from documentation. We could add something to Wolfram language data.
All right, well, how would we do that? What would be a thing? So let's take integer string as our example.
I place an example. There is already a common option values property in the chat.
Okay, well, that's presumably not this bucket, but
But it may lead to something that is this bucket.
right.
I mean, this isn't crazy, except...
Okay, this is pulling the option completions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not documentation based. This is coming from the option completion data.
Would that actually give the result for integer string? Let's look.
Well,
Well, actually,
I mean, it's options and arguments are different on,
well, here.
yeah.
well, graph layout doesn't have option values like graph might.
I see. Well, is there another name for the thing that graph layout would have?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
That's totally weird. I don't even know why that's there. What the hell is that?
You don't know what
Which-
plot theme is?
No, why is it? What is it doing with graph?
Well,
Because graphs take plot themes.
Do they?
yes, for years.
Or is it called graph theme? Maybe there's a...
No, it's plot theme.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
Your
Actually, I didn't know.
assistants
Now
know
that I think about it, yeah, I know. I've never used it though.
that.
Should use it.
So you insisted we put it in, and then you never use it. That makes us feel really good about how our
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did I insist on putting that in?
Yes.
But okay. Well, it was a good idea until... Okay, but what about all the other things like graph layout? Why is graph layout not in here?
Presumably nobody's encoded completions, right? So if you do graph and then
Something.
Just
right.
something,
Oh,
comma.
maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't pull in the general things, right? So you can attach option completions to specific heads, and you can say in any head. So if you do graph layout, okay, so that means that what I'm guessing what this means is that graph layout has sort of global option completions, and Wolfram language data doesn't know to pull in the...
That seems like a bug in Wolfram language data, if I might say so.
Sure.
Probably.
We'll communicate to Eric.
Okay. Looks silly. Okay. So, all right. So let's look at what's on the table. First of all, I really like the idea of putting click to copies in the documentation. And I also really like the idea...
what do you want to copy? Like something, for example,
Okay,
in some
that was
cases
the
you
thing I
only
was just
have
about
list
to
of
come to.
strings.
No, that's what I was going to come
Yeah.
to. I think what we should copy is a symbolic thing, might be Wolfram language data, might be something different, and that symbolic thing would evaluate. That symbolic thing could have multiple properties itself that could include, for example, something which I don't think would be useless, right? Would be, okay, so that object should both be the, okay, so the copied object.
Well, this is where I'm going to disagree with you for both conceptual and practical.
Okay, just a second.
Well, let him say
One
it first so the rest of us...
Yeah, right. The list of strings. Another will be a data set, including, common names, etc. In other words, so for example, let's take graph layout as an example. Okay. I wouldn't mind having something where I could readily make a list here where it says, where that explanation where I could have something where I, for example, label things with that explanation. Do you get what I'm saying?
No.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, imagine that this is a data set. Okay, imagine that I'm making a table of graphs, right? I'm saying, whatever it is, complete graph 5, graph layout, arrow, hash, map that over whatever I'm mapping it over, the thing that I basically can't easily scrape from here. Okay, so let's say that is humorously horrifying. Right? That's exactly what I don't want to have happen. Yeah, I don't know what to do with this. I mean, that's another thing. We could make it okay. Okay, but okay, here's my point. Okay, my point is, what if I wanted to label these underneath, with the words, whatever it is, whatever.
You mean with the third column text descriptions?
Yes, with that description.
Okay, so one bit from working on the new fit report object for the model fit, I think the best would be to be able to, that list, instead of being a list, is the object you want with some arrow syntax or something that pulls out the two, like value and description. And then inside the map, you do, graph layout hash value, plot labeled hash description.
Great, but why not do the following
we
thing?
don't do something crazy in the function. We just make the object structurable in a way.
That's fine, but look, if the thing that comes out here, okay, I think we're understanding a flow here. The anchor, the discovery interface is click to copy and documentation and some kind of footer in the autocomplete. Does that make sense to people? What is it discovering? It's discovering some symbolic object that is capable of giving you, either a naked list of strings or some kind of data set or something from which you can extract these pieces. Does that make sense to everybody?
Perhaps I'm not understanding, but not entirely, no.
Okay, so let me go through it again. Okay, I don't know what the symbolic object should be. Jose has made the suggestion that it could be Wolfram language data. I had the previous suggestion that it could be the data repository. Okay, we don't know what the symbolic object is.
Okay.
And that we're going to figure that out. It could be a new function settings thing. It could be all sorts of things, right? That object would be something like, okay, let's imagine that it was, okay, let's imagine that it's an entity, okay? That it's an entity called something like, entity, it could be Wolfram language settings, okay? And its name is something like graph layout settings, okay? And that entity, I'm not necessarily thinking about this correctly, but that entity then has, for example, a property called list that is just the naked settings. It could have another property called data set, and so on.
Right. Okay. And yes. And so I'm disagreeing with this for both logical and practical reasons. First of all, right, there is no right, you can't have a graph layout settings because, right, there are three different things there.
Well, okay. Look, this is why. This is going to be artisanal. It's not, this is, okay. Let me explain.
I think it would be much better if, the thing, directly copied the data, which maybe as a data set, if you want to be able to do these multiple things,
What
which,
data? What data?
the data that this thing that can, the most general form of this data
Well,
that,
I'm sorry. So what do you say? One possibility, which I think is an alternative possibility, is there is no symbolic intermediary. We never have to name something. And that the click to copy in the documentation simply copies this as a data set. Is that what you're proposing?
yes.
Okay. I don't think that's obviously silly. And in some ways it might be more flexible. Okay, there's a third possibility, which is that the click to copy has an option. That is that you can copy multiple different things.
Like copy value or copy table, something like
Yes,
that.
yes,
And the table has in this case, we like have icon, value, description as headers.
yes, for example. Okay, the disadvantage of what you're suggesting, Itai, is that these things that you copy out, there are a couple of disadvantages. One is, I think having a symbolic version would be nice in code and also is future compatible. Because if it is this entity, then when you run it in a new version and there are new graph layout settings, you get those new graph layout settings.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
seems
I
desirable.
agree with that. Now well, well, that really depends on. Okay, well, yes, you wouldn't have to copy it from the new documentation to make it work.
Correct. Yes,
Right.
correct.
Yes.
Okay,
Now,
that's one
of
argument.
course, the downside is that, this can't possibly work without somebody manually tagging each table.
Absolutely. It cannot work without that. This is my guess is that in the early phase of this, there'll be 30, maybe 50 different such places. Okay? Different such things.
Right. And so,
And they will gradually expand. Okay? And it'll be a list of, the import formats. It'll be a list of, just random things and I like the idea because they are somewhat random things. I like the idea of the main discovery interface being documentation.
mhm,
So the issue is, do we do the kind of hole-in-one approach of it's just a click to copy from the documentation, you get what you get, and that's it? Or do we go through a symbolic layer? Okay, I'm going to argue that my tendency is to think that going through a symbolic layer is a good idea. First, for the futurability of it, so to speak. Second, for the documentability of it, because if we have that symbolic thing, we could document it, right? We could say, and it could have different properties. I'm not certain that it's right to have the symbolic layer in the middle, and we could
So
also start off without the symbolic layer because nobody is going to, if people find the click to copy and you know, and then um, what am I saying? And use it, they're happy. If in a subsequent version they find that it's become symbolic, they're not going to be any less happy, so to speak.
so why don't we have a Wolfram language data property called nodes tables, and it returns a list with all the tables that are in the nodes. It could be data sets or tabulars.
Okay.
And then
And they would each have a name.
yes, or if it's too difficult to find a name because perhaps that needs curation, we just put the list of tables, and it would be easy to get the full list of tables and then say, oh, I want a third, or I want all of them.
Yeah, except that then we have to lock in that if you write that in a piece of code, I don't think that's a good idea to have positional ones because if you lock it into a piece of code that it's the 7th table,
Mhm.
in the next version it might be the 9th table and then you're toast.
Yes, but from version to version, we might also rewrite the documentation and have a different set of tables.
But
So
we'd have to
Right, you
preserve
might
the
have
old
different
ones.
tables, but the settings probably aren't going to change.
Yeah, but also we'd have to preserve the old settings name. I mean, like for example, if we did it with entities, we would just preserve, whatever graph layout settings is, we will preserve that thing, even if we change what's in the documentation, we would somehow preserve the fact that that is going to give you a thing with a certain shape. Okay, so what the thing I'm not convinced about, okay, so let's say it goes to Wolfram language data, and then we say of graph layout, and then we say notes tables, and then what?
Right. And of course, not all those notes tables are created equal. So,
Yes, but it could be a list of data sets, say.
Right. I mean, but if you tag the ones that you want to show up here, then
right.
and, you know, and in the tagging process, you give them a name.
Right, but
You
okay,
know,
but so what would be the name for this?
Well,
layouts.
I mean, you are talking about there being three names, right?
Well, it could be all settings. It could be, we could have all settings. We could have
But sorry,
minimization
Stephen.
settings.
Before we go too much in depth with this, like, what about all the tables where you have at the end like F or element one, element two, dot dot
Yeah,
dot?
well, that's a good reason to not do it this way. That's a good reason to do it more in something like this, where all we're saying is this is a collection of settings. It may not be all of them. It's just named settings. I mean, here we could have, this could also say named settings. Okay, that idea of named settings gives me the notion, okay, so look, this could be, it could be named Wolfram language named settings. Now that could also be, instead of notes tables, this could be named settings there.
But what does that return, given that we
Well,
have three sets of named settings?
I think it would return all of them by default, and then we could have subcases like a named minimization settings data set.
Okay.
And then what would happen is the click to copy here would return Wolfram language data, graph layout, named, well, it would potentially offer you at the top here, arguably, oh, look, that's interesting. Arguably, we could put some things on guide pages as well. Like in places like this, up here, at the top here, we could have, named settings data set at the top. And then in each table here, we could have a click to copy for that table. I mean, I'm going to say it again. This is going to be somewhat artisanal. And I think the fact that it comes from something in the documentation really, really helps that idea. I'm actually fairly excited about this solution of putting a click to copy in the documentation. But it also needs, yeah. Okay, so what we have on offer is an entity approach, which I'm not wild about, I think. I'm kind of warming to this Wolfram language data named settings type approach. I mean, and then we could also have something like something like the oh my god, what is it? Sound, and then we could have instrument names. Now, can we do that? Have different, have just sort of arbitrary second argument properties for Wolfram language data or not? I think we can, right?
I don't think there's any reason that we couldn't.
I mean, it would. I
Could we
think
solve
it
this?
would be for all of them. It would just be missing not applicable, right?
Right. I mean, the question, I mean, as long as you have some sort of discovery mechanism, so, if I know sound, I can find out what the second arguments are for it.
Well, obviously we can have a Wolfram language data, which is a self-reflective thing, but
Right.
the number one way you're going to find the instrument names is because you're looking at them on the documentation page.
Right.
Well, there
And
could be
or
a
yeah.
property that is a name that indicates specific properties of the symbol. And
Yeah,
then,
exactly. Right. So we could have Wolfram language data of symbol and then, you know, properties. Why not?
well, that's already
Uh,
taken.
Doesn't that works already?
Yeah, yes. So that should return all the properties that currently work. So we need another, it's like specific properties.
But why isn't it, is that, or is that the kind of outer product? Is that kind of the superset of all things, the union of all things?
Yes, but I mean, it's common. All symbols are supposed to return something. In a few cases, they will be not applicable, but in
Sorry,
general,
what do you mean by union? Aren't those properties
No,
that are returning something, or these are all the
yes, but
properties in
I'm saying
general?
for different symbols, like for things that are options versus this versus that,
Yes,
do they all have the same properties here?
Yes.
yeah.
yes.
Okay, fine. So then
Oh,
it would need
we
to be
don't
something different.
filter out the one that are not applicable?
No.
Well, I mean,
I don't
define
under,
not
I don't I
applicable.
don't understand why we can't just use named settings for all of these things, right? If it's right, and the fact that they're instruments, right? I mean, named settings for sound could be, instruments
But what
and
if there's two arguments? What if there's
right.
two
Well,
different?
right. So then it could be an association with
No, but what if there are two different arguments what if
yes.
argument?
Well, yes, like sound, right? There are at least two and I think three arguments that take string completions.
Are there?
Or sound note, right? It's sound note, not sound. Um,
Oh yeah, that's right. Those take string completions as well.
right. And the percussion events.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So if necessary, right. And right, you were talking, and in the case where you were talking about, even in the case of graph layout, right, where we wanted, um, right, each of the three tables by itself, and right, we didn't even look at the other two tables, which also seem to have strings in them. I'm not sure what those were for. Right. So there could be like an all and
All right. So you're suggesting that what we do is named settings here, and then it's like, and then we say percussion events here. Is that the idea?
sure.
And that gives us a list of those percussion events. Or we could say here something like, let's say, instruments data set, which would not be instruments would just give the list. An instruments data set would give some annotated list that has, explicit names for these things in cases where that makes sense.
Can we do that automatically if we add in DocuTools a mechanism to tag the table with a name? Can we pull in that
Sure,
name?
I'm
So
sure we
you
can
do
do that.
everything
Yes.
from the documentation at this point.
Right. I mean, I think, and in fact, I think we could extend this, I don't know if this requires updating notebooks. Well, it might just for the names, we might need to update notebooks, right? But we have the existing tagging mechanism for string completions, right? And so for string arguments. And I don't
Okay.
know if we're going to include string. Well, obviously
We
these
are
are
going
string
to.
arguments here.
Yeah.
So we could, we could extend that to sort of include a name or something, and then the build could generate this stuff, or however Eric scours the notebooks
Yeah.
to generate Wolfram language data.
But we are going to need to have a little thing here that says copy, copy list or something like that right there.
Mhm.
That'll make that line a little bit more interesting.
You know
All the typical
what,
settings include, and then it gets an icon with a button,
Right.
S-
what we could do for tables that have the existing tagging, right? We could, if we don't update the tag, right, if we update the tagging to include a name, then it's used to generate a Wolfram language data entry. If we don't update the tagging, it just gives you a flat list of the names.
Sorry, I didn't know. So say that again.
Right. So go to something like, well, I'm sure coordinate chart data has this. If you go to the source notebook. Right. So if you scroll down a little bit and why don't I see the little green button? Okay, so maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I had to do this by hand because of all the list stuff. Um, Surely I can think of something. Anybody, what's something that takes string arguments that would be tagged in the documentation?
Integer string.
That may not be tagged in the documentation but it might. Oh, yep, right. So you see that little green button there? Right. So
Yes.
that is the thing that says that you should use this table, right?
For a second argument.
For the second argument. Right. And so
Okay.
if we update this tagging to include a name, then the click to copy button could,
Okay, but I think we should
from,
have actual text in the click. I mean, it'll be some mechanism like this.
but what I am suggesting for tables where we already have this tagging,
Yes.
if we update the tagging to include a name, it could be included in Wolfram language data, and your little click to copy button would copy the Wolfram language data expression.
Yeah, I understand, but we still
Yeah,
need to say what
but if we don't update the tagging, because there are hundreds and hundreds of pages which have this tagging already, then we could have a click to copy, which just copies the flat list of values. So it does something useful. Maybe you don't think that there's any value in that, but I feel like that's.
Sorry, you're saying tables that. Well, let's inventory how many of these tables there are.
Hundreds.
Okay. Well, it would be nice if they did something in all cases. I agree.
Right. And what I'm suggesting it should do is, in the case where we don't update the tagging to include a name, it could just, the click to copy button could just copy the flat list of values.
Fine. Yeah, and not go to Wolfram language data.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. But then so the primitive form is it just copies the values, or possibly copies them as a data set.
Mm-hmm.
The less primitive form is it goes through Wolfram language data through a named settings property.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we want to automatically exclude cells with ... for example?
Yeah, I was thinking
if
we
you're thinking
would,
about
and
the
things that involve
programmatic
italics.
Well, yeah, you can't do the tagging for ... right? The tagging only allows you to put in string values. So
but I was thinking about the case where you don't have it. Yeah, you were mentioning let's do something sensible.
But I'm not talking about arbitrary tables. I'm talking about tables which have already been tagged for string completion. I think it's completely hopeless to do something automatically. Well, I think it's mostly.
Then I misunderstood then what you were saying. I thought you were suggesting something different for tables that were tagged and tables that were not tagged.
No, I'm suggesting something different for tables with updated tagging versus tables with current tagging.
Oh, okay. I see.
Okay.
So one complication is things that are where the settings are conditional. The big case of that being like method, whose values depend on the function.
And the input.
Yeah, but I mean, so the answer to that is something like, this is named settings, and this is, method options or something, and it just gives you a list. And if you,
right, and we
okay,
those could be further divided, right? Because like in linear algebra, right, you might have like exact methods versus approximate methods,
So
etc.
I have a small suggestion. Can we have the Okay, this is already a question maybe about the current system of autocompletion. If I split my list of string for the second argument in two,
Yep.
can I tag both of them to be part of the
Yes,
same
and it will,
completion
and,
list?
and
Yeah,
it will
yeah,
use the
yeah.
union.
It will union them.
Okay, so I guess
But
if I use the same name in the two lists, it will produce the same entry in Wolfram language data.
Well, that's a question we'd have to cross. Can you do that?
Listen, guys, there are going to be many corner cases here. I think we've got a basic scheme. I think the minimal thing is it just copies directly from the documentation a raw list or data set. The second level is that we do something with named settings and Wolfram language data. And I think, go ahead.
I was just, for the curious, I was just going to say that there are 457 symbols with these string annotations.
Can you show me the list? Can you send me the list? Can you send me the code to make the
Yeah,
list?
yeah. You want it in email or?
On the chat if you want.
Okay, well, I don't know if 457
No, don't
symbols will-
just send me the code that makes it if you.
Oh, no. That I can't do.
Okay, send it an email then.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was not lying.
What? There was hundreds
When I
of them?
said it's
Yeah,
literally
I
hundreds of
underestimated
pages.
that. Yes. Okay. There is a question about whether data set is the right generic thing to use in the case where we have kind of a multi-column table. I think it is. Anybody disagree?
Well, we could use tabular if it is always going to be flat, yeah?
I don't know if it's always flat.
I just sent it to you.
Okay.
We could look at a few and see. I mean,
okay, let's just
I
have
don't
a
know
quick
how-
look through here of whether there are ones that we think are surprising. Okay. Alphabet, not surprising. Anderson-Darling test. How do I
it's one of
open
those hypothesis tests.
Just
Shift Command F.
command, yeah, option, or command shift F, yeah.
Yeah, hypothesis
Actually,
testing.
that's properties. Yeah, it's properties though.
But these are
Yeah.
named settings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they're great.
This is the good,
Yeah, no
good use
problem.
case.
Anatomy data.
So probably properties.
No, properties. Fine.
That type list.
Fine. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, let's look. Angle bisector. Oh, that's probably outside and inside angle.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty harmless. Pretty uninteresting list, but it's convenient to not have to retype interior, exterior if you want both of them. That one is going to be a good one, I think. Well, I mean, that's not so useful because you're not going to want to produce all of them, but that's fine.
Yeah, some of these tables have messy items in them. The code that builds the completions just, strips out the messy items.
Okay, but like this, for example, I don't know how worthwhile it is. This one isn't the most worthwhile. I mean, we could also say some of these tables are excluded as not being particularly useful to give, a multi-list. Like this one, I can predict is going to be useful. That one is, that's actually not so useful. But it's interesting. We haven't hit any method options here yet.
Well,
Because this is only for string arguments. This is not for.
right. We've never done things this way for options because option right-hand sides don't tend to have the level of uniformity that these string selector arguments do.
Okay, fine.
Particularly in terms of how we write the documentation.
Okay, but this approach that we're describing will work for all of these different things.
Well, you could argue that the presence of a system like this would help bringing uniformity to how we write the documentation for options that take string settings.
Right. I mean, we would need a new kind of tagging for option values, right? So that the code, you're right, it won't try to complete, method names in in random places, but
Yeah.
And if we did this, it would improve completions as well. I mean, this can feed back into the completions code quite
And
straightforwardly.
then we can have some code that checks that if you have a templated symbol in the text, in the caption line plus a border table, which is also the name of an argument, it suggests you in the under documentation report that you should mark that table for completion.
Right. Okay. Listen, let's feed this to Eric and Jeff, and I think we've got a winning idea here.
well, and yeah, and well, we'll also need Brian, obviously, for
Yes. Okay. Good work, everybody. I
Can
was
we
worried about.
see again
Yeah.
the full list of things that you wanted to, because I think we solved a couple, maybe all of them.
We solved one of the three, but
One of the three whats?
use cases, or maybe two. We certainly didn't solve. Right. So we certainly didn't resolve getting default settings and getting general possible settings
We
value.
did. I don't know what your tagging discussion is. We got to solve that.
We-
But like
we-
graph
we-
layout,
Right, but okay. Well, if by possible settings you only mean
named.
named ones, sure. Okay.
But if they're not named,
But
then we end up with
you've also
initialized
talked
graph.
about getting right, but we certainly didn't solve the getting default settings for options.
No,
No, but that's not what we're trying to solve here. We're trying to solve the one specific problem.
Wait. No. Okay, don't try to gaslight me like that. All right. These are all things that you have insisted in one meeting or another, most of them in meetings that I have been a part of, that you have referred to as part of this problem that
Okay,
you
all right. Okay, let's inventory this. Okay, so the thing we think we just solved is there's a list of possibilities. You see it in the documentation. You want it programmatically. That's the one we've solved so far. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Next, the next one is the default setting for an option.
Yep.
Why isn't that something you just find by saying,
Because it might be automatic.
isn't that full options?
No.
What do you mean? I thought full options was supposed to resolve automatics.
I think Itai meant automatic in a different sense. Or Itai, are you considering things like you say find minimum and it automatically picks a method and you want to know after the fact what it used? Or something else?
Well, that is one possibility. I mean, the thing that has previously been discussed a lot is, viz functions and what will be the default settings for, the 137 options that plot takes, which is not something you can get from absolute options.
I have a suggestion here. So sometimes you use set options to change options. And then the question is, how do you get back to the originals? So we could have set options plot comma automatic, say.
Set options should be deprecated.
But this is not. But that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
But
what is the case that you want to solve, Itai?
I want to know what color plot is going to be using.
I see.
Which is something which I know is something you've wanted to solve as well.
Yes, for sure. Okay, that's a different problem. I agree. That's a serious problem, and that I understand that problem. That's not really default settings for options. That's things like...
Yes, that is the default settings for...
Well, you're saying what is the default plot style? What is actually the default plot style?
Correct. Which may depend on your style sheet. It may depend... It obviously depends on the function, right? Because 2D and 3D functions behave differently, and possibly there are further right?
Okay.
Categorizations, but it may also depend on your right. And then the question is, how far do we want to extend this? Of like, do we want to know what is the default plot style in this theme in this style sheet? I'm not suggesting we need to get
All right,
into
I get
right now,
the
given
point.
that we're 21 minutes over, but I'm
get
just
the
saying
point.
that this is a problem that has also been referred to in this set of things that
Yes. What are the other? Are there any other ones? That one is a perfectly real one. Are there any other ones?
I think we're basically, because we've talked about extending the existing tagging, I think we've basically solved the first one, and we've limited what the third one means. So we've solved that one. And then, yeah, there's the fourth possible thing, which has been, also been, suggested, of resources that a function, and I think Julio might have more.
Yeah, that is a bit
Hold on.
more
Let's just talk
Yeah.
about the plot thing for a second, okay?
Okay.
Where could we put, let's say we had a thing that says, the default style. Okay. Let's say the default style is given by symbolic name. That symbolic name, when evaluated, goes and looks at the style sheet. Is that possible? That's a John Foltz question, I think.
Oh, sorry.
I mean,
Sorry.
it's of course it's possible because that's what plot is doing. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
As long
it's some
as you're
form.
as long as you're actually evaluating from a notebook, then yes, plot can do that.
Okay, what is the function that you call, and you have a function internally that does that, right, Brett?
Right. I mean, internally it is charting backtick resolve plot theme.
Okay. And you give it the
You give it the symbol and the theme.
Okay, let me tell you another thing that's sort of related to this. Okay. And you've got this notion of color data of what is
Default
it called?
plot colors.
Which, yes, we know the completion doesn't work. It's
Very mysterious.
yes,
Very.
Because it is in there, so it should work.
There's some kind of build problem that I need to run down, and I haven't yet. It's on me.
Okay.
Right. And of course, this is giving you for the default theme in the default style sheet.
Right. It doesn't go as far as if you put it in one of the few style sheets that has a different behavior with themes, this doesn't change. So it lies in that case.
Right.
Right. And something that Brett has pointed out is that, when we move from 2D to 3D, then it's not just in order to actually sort of match styles, it's not enough to know the plot style. You also need to know the lighting and the whatever. And this.
Right. So I just want to show you something that I use all the time. Okay. In function repository.
Is that resource data of graph theme?
No.
No. Okay.
No, it's the one that has all of his blog colors, basically. Yeah. Except it's not called that.
I think there is a new one that may be called something more like that, but it's this. Okay. This is super useful. And it will be useful to people for their projects as well. I mean, not this particular one, but this allows one to say, oh, I'm, drawing a causal graph. What is the standard color that I use for that? See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a useful thing for users. And I don't know how we best expose something like this. You're doing a project. you're doing a project with other people. You want to kind of post a thing, probably in the cloud, it's like a data repository entry, or it's like like a theme repository, which we've talked about a bunch of times. And if we did that, if we had a theme repository, we'd simply have a default theme repository. See what I'm saying? A repository of default themes. That's part of the user accessible theme repository. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, perhaps this is where we address things. And I have to run.
Okay. Well,
I think we've achieved quite a bit here. So please bring this back, the theme repository or whatever it is. And I would like to know other examples of this type of thing that aren't in visualization, if
Okay.
there are any, or whether it's primarily a visualization issue. Let me just look at one thing.
I'm sure Julio can give me a list of things that aren't viz functions, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, we've done well here. This was a good solution. All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys. See
See
ya.
ya.